let's welcome in Mr. Jignanshu Gor, who's the analyst at Bernstein, who tracks the space very closely and who's here to give us insights on the entire QSR space. Mr. Gor, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to NTV Profit. You know, in your report, you've mentioned that 2025 will be a turnaround for QSR, you know, as a space overall. What factors do you think will lead to this turnaround?
Thank you so much for having me on the call. We believe QSR stocks were beaten down and the performance of the companies was beaten down materially in 2024. The weaker demand environment, which started off in 24 or 23 last quarter, sort of continued through the full calendar year, and everybody reported negative SSSGs with EBITDA margins also falling materially. 2025 seems different for three core reasons in our view. One reason is the demand picking up slightly. Jubilant's early numbers for Q3 suggest that, which they've reported for the first time, a positive SSSG of 12.5% for the quarter three, which is one of the highest that they've recorded in the last 4 to 5 years, ignoring COVID. So that demand bottoming out in the last quarter, and hence recovery of that demand aided by controlling food inflation, better crop cycle and rains, and potentially repo cuts / budget swaps, and hence more direct money into the hands of the people. So I think that's one factor. Second factor is because of the weaker demand, companies have made significant efforts on menu innovations, on bringing in value products to bring customers back in. Those initiatives should help them get more customers in for 2025 as well, even if in H1, as we expect, the demand will be weaker than what they would like. And third, I think, is simply the base effect that the last year was so bad with negative SSSGs that growth this year will help them show positive prints when they release their results.
Okay, Jignanshu Harsh also joining in. Good afternoon. Jignanshu, so of course, one part of it is recovery. The other part of it is margins. And on the inflation front, especially on the food inflation front, there just doesn't seem to be comfort here. I mean, when you're looking at, for example, the commentary coming through, some were suggesting post-rains things will improve. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be a material improvement. So where does the margin comfort come from for you?
So very interestingly, Harsh, last year when the inflation was even higher than what it is right now, most QSRs in the listed space were able to expand on their gross margins by between around 100 to 150 basis points. Now this has happened because they have tweaked around their portfolio. They've taken 1-2% whatever price increases were required. So in an inflationary environment like that, if without taking major price increases, they can manage increase in gross margins, we think that in a slightly improving environment on a full year basis, they should be able to manage the gross margin. I think the supply chains of the firms are pretty mature for that. When you go below gross margins, the EBITDA has a very, very high correlation in restaurant space with SSSGs. So if SSSG goes up, the same store sales growth goes up, the EBITDA goes up. And hence, margins for, let's say, Jubilant, which came down to around 12%, the pre-Ind AS EBITDA margin, they will recover as soon as the SSSG hits a positive note. Right? And that is what we will see going forward. That is what we have seen for the last 10 years, given the high amount of operating leverage in the business. So that this is where my view of gross margin being stable, but higher SSSG is allowing using the operating leverage to then flow down to EBITDA comes from.
Jignanshu, you know, one thing that was very interesting in your report was you said cloud kitchens will make a narrative comeback. And secondly, you also mentioned that regional brands will continue to grow. On one side, there are these QSRs which are, you know, planning expansion with respect to their stores, and they're going aggressive when it comes to store expansion. But from what I reckon is that though they're expanding their store, their area per square feet is going down, which is why we're seeing an uptick in, you know, revenue per square feet. How are you reading this? Because, you know, one side, cloud kitchens are going to pick up. there is regional brands which are also going to see an uptick, but on the other side, there is store expansion taking place, but revenue per square foot is going down. How do you correlate all of these?
Well, the very broader answer is that the market is deep enough for both. But let me give you a more nuanced view of why I think these two trends are possible together. One, on the cloud kitchen and regional brand space, they have really sort of last 2 years, they leveraged the aggregators which democratized delivery, which democratized discovery to grow. And the funding sort of winter, as called, as was there in F21, F22, and F23, seems to be going away in this space, right? Last year, multiple brands have raised money, like Wow Momo, Rebel raised money from Temasek in December. That funding coming back into the food space is why I believe that it will give ammunition to both cloud kitchen as well as regional brands to continue their growth. However, the dent that they would have to make on QSR is stabilized now, right? Because there is no new brand which is coming in. The brands are growing their network. QSRs have a basic advantage of having a proven profitable business model. The difference between the two is, I think the larger brands will grow their network in metro cities, whereas the other QSRs will grow their network outside of the top cities. To give you a data point, even today, a very well penetrated brand like Jubilant has 57% of its stores in the top 40 cities in India. Somebody like a Westlife has 71% of their stores in those top 40 cities. So QSRs are still very, very metro heavy and top 40 city heavy. So their network expansion, we believe, will be geared towards tier 2, tier 3, whereas the network expansion or store opening of cloud kitchen and regional brands will remain, or will be in sort of the top 40 cities, pushed by the private equity capital which might be available for them. But a competitive landscape will, I think, stabilize more or less, because the commission increases driven by Zomato and Swiggy, or the increase in monthly transacting users has stabilized now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jignanshu. This was insightful, especially with regard to CSR. Of course, Jignanshu's views being it's going to be a year of CSR. So thanks for this, Jignanshu.